We looked at what should we do with the content even before getting into the design. Now the next part is designing, right? Evaluation and selection. How do you choose that? Which kind of approach do you want to follow for your form design, for your context, right? So which approach? How do you evaluate and how do you select one out of many? So for that, if you look at the atomic design, the elements are there, and then we talked about the sections in the previous one in which we talked about logical ordering and grouping. Now it is about organisms and templates. So how can you do the pages, right? So all should be in one page, or you should do a different page and all those things. Try to understand what is the goal of form design. What are the different components that are inside it, right? So if you see, the goal of any form design is to, so 5 things, right? Set expectations for users. What are you expecting out of your users when you are, giving the form to them? Help users enter the data correctly. So it's not just entering the data, but also making sure they are doing it correctly. The other thing is help users submit data into this data to the system. So it's not just entering the data. You should allow them to save it or submit it there. So the actions, right? And also receive feedback from the system. Okay, so whether the data is being added or not, or is there any error, or what's going on within the system. And the last one is help users recover from unintended consequences. So in form design, you can make a lot of input mistakes when you are entering names, cities, right? So there will be different criteria, all caps or all small caps, all those things will be there. But you need to help users to recover from unintended consequences. The first component is set expectations for users, right? Communicate what is expected, right? So this is the question, right? So identify the key form components that helps to set expectations for users. What are the components in this design which is actually helping you set the expectations? So one is mandatory versus non-mandatory, and then the progress bar, and also all the labels that are there. So first name is setting the expectation for that box that you can only enter first name there, right? Title, you can only enter title there. So you're setting expectation for each of the fields that way. Let's talk about progress bars. When to use progress bars in the form? So if you see, progress bars are used in when the form is long and when you are using, multi-steps if you have different contexts, right? So if you see there is single step form, it's very, very, the fields are very, very limited and you can complete it very, very quickly. Just best suited for fewer input fields with similar intention. If you talk about multi-step form, right, just like the example that we saw previously, it is best suited if you have a long form and you have the advantage that, okay, there are some sections with similar intention, right? So account information, then personal information, payment information, and then done, right? So in account, you will enter everything that is needed for you to create and manage account. Personal is your names and all those, that will be your identifier and everything. Then payment, all the payment things and everything, right? So intentions are similar for each section, and then you can decide whether you want to put multi-step progress bar or just the progress bar and everything. So the second goal is collect data, help users enter the data accurately, right? So for which we have seen different types in our previous class. So if you are inputting the data, you'll have certain pros and cons. When you're selecting data, you'll have certain pros and cons. So by evaluating that, you can decide and ensure that you are collecting the data in a appropriate manner, right? So these are the basics. Next one, actions, right? This is very, very important, right? Because a lot of forms, you will see that there are a lot of issues with actions. So basically help users submit data into the system successfully. The first question here is critique this Pinterest login form given. So what's going on here? Is it a good way, bad way? Why? The way you can say it is there is no prioritization. The product makers also do not know that whether they want their users to go with the email password, email phone number or password, or with Facebook or Google, right? So there is no prioritization what they want from their users to do. So they can do this, but then they will think, hey, I can do this, so why do I do this? I'll do this. This is simple for me. But they have also put that not as the first option but the second option, right? So priority is confusing. And also this button is enabled. So while you are doing actions for form design, right, you should be able to prioritize your actions, right? So if you look at, industry standards, there are primary buttons, secondary buttons, and tertiary buttons. Primary buttons are something that have highest visibility, and they are used for the main action in any kind of context or any kind of section or screen. Then the secondary buttons are there. They have, second highest visibility that you use for anything that is secondary and not primary, right? So if you are saying, okay, that's your primary, you are saying cancel, that's your secondary. If you want to do cancel, you can cancel. And then tertiary action. So if you have a lot of buttons in your form, you can, play with the hierarchy and you can decide how many secondary you want and how many tertiary you want. But there should always be a limit, that's for sure. But yeah, that's the story. What are the different ways to provide feedback to users? So, okay, first in inline validation, autofill and everything can also come under feedback. There is one more feedback, which is confirmation message. When you complete form filling process, you get the message, okay, your data has been submitted successfully. That's also a feedback. So if we look at some of the examples, right, can you identify, so we have looked at this example previously too, but can you identify the feedback element in this form? So autofill, right? Auto updation. So you are selecting and everything is getting filled automatically. So that's also a way of giving feedback that, okay, I took your data from you and I fetched everything and I minimized your effort there, right? So system is taking company name to autofill the address fields. And this itself gives the feedback that the company input is also appropriate. It's not wrong. When we talk about inline validation, the best way to do it is you go to, you help the users by giving them feedback contextually and not, after doing everything at the last. So if you're talking about multiple devices, you take all the constraints for multiple devices and then you decide what layout should I put. Because if you are talking about desktop and mobile, then doing multi-column layout will be a challenge. You'll have to do all those, compare and contrast pros and cons evaluation. So depending on context, right? So if you are talking about native, then you will have to think about those constraints. If you are talking about responsive, you'll have to think about those constraints, all those things. The third one is confirmation, right? So, okay, you did something successfully or you failed in that, right? So you're giving the feedback. And this is basically, if you are saying it has failed, you are helping them recover and diagnose from error. So the next one is help users recover from unintended consequences, right? And it is very, very important, right? Because users will tend to make mistakes. Whatever you do, however, beautifully or, an easy way you design the form, people will tend to make mistakes. So you'll have to help them. So what are the best ways to help the users while using a form? So can you identify all the elements that are helping you to fill the form correctly in this example? So if you see, there are different help elements that are helping you complete your actions, right? So there is that info icon, then there is, hint text that is there. Then there is hyperlink too, because it will help you with the referral code. It will help you educate about it. And then the groupings itself, right? And also the shape coding, I would also agree, right? So yes, these are all help elements, right? The next question is Is the user familiar with the form fields added here? If they are not, then help them out contextually, right? So what this is saying is, okay, you are filling some tax form, but real estate tax is if they are not, aware of it, if they are not familiar with certain languages, right? So when you sign up and you do your name, email, address, you will obviously be familiar with that. But there are certain cases when you are filling your income tax or applying for PAN card or applying for, let's say, Aadhaar card or something. There will be a lot of unfamiliarity with the data. So help them contextually. That's one takeaway I think you should be very careful about when you are designing a form. Form layout, right? Single column versus double column versus multi-column, right? It can be any. So when do we use what, right? So yes. So the first question is identify the differences between two layouts given. What is the difference? I mean, the difference is obviously single column, double column, but why? What is the difference in terms of context? So you see one kind of content is there on the left in which you want to enter credentials. On the right, the difference is that you want to enter address, right? So the information is different. But now my question is, what is the difference in the nature of the content? The content, of course, is different, but what is the difference in the nature of the content as well? So why one is single, why the other is double? So yes, so what I'm understanding the takeaway is if the information is related, the fields are related, you can club them and use them side by side, right? And when you have the real estate, so that is what you can do when you have the real estate. So okay, yeah, I would agree, that's the intention, right? So if you see, email and password are not related, right? First name, last name is related, area code, primary phone, they both are related, city, state, and the pin is related, right? So they are clubbing it that way, right? They are also, if you see, they are doing the shape coding there and uh, right. So for everything, and they are managing the real estate, trying to manage the real estate aesthetically and also what you say, proportionately, right? Single column layout is best where there is no dependency between inputs. And also it is easier to fill as users naturally read from top to bottom, but that's also questionable, right? And then double column layout when there is continuation or dependency or relationship between the input fields. Can you identify if there are any problems in this form? We are using double column layout. What is the problem? Is there any problem? There is significant possibility that user will end up reading left to right and they'll say first name and then they'll say address and they'll get confused. And talking about the visual momentum, the CTA is also, it's little off the way you are completing your form. And then, so you are looking, you are filling on the left and then on the right, in which you are first getting confused. You want to, fill that this way. And then, of course, after completing the address, the CTA is again on the left. Yes, so if you see the way the visual momentum is being broken is, it is not catering to your real world, right? So it's violation of match between system and real world too, because exactly the way you will expect is, okay, first name tab, last name tab, address 1 tab, address 2, and so on and so forth. So yes, that's the problem in this form, right? And it can be improved significantly if you are identifying those problems and you are correcting it. When you are designing form, you have to be careful and mindful about tabbing, right? Because this acts as an accelerator for users to quickly fill the form without having to use your mouse. So be mindful about when how you are defining your tabbing sequence so that you are catering to the match between system and real world too in that sense. So if you see the primary action is on the right and this tertiary action is on the left.